December 15, 1985, Beverly Hills. 7 days after meeting Brigitte Nielsen on the set of Rocky IV, Sylvester Stallone married her in a lavish ceremony attended by Hollywood royalty. 7 days from first meeting to wedding vows. His friends thought he was insane. His family begged him to wait. His lawyers warned this was a catastrophic decision. Stallone didn't care. He was 39 years old, recently divorced, and convinced he'd found his soulmate in the 6'1", Danish model-turned-actress. 18 months later, the marriage imploded in scandal, infidelity, and a divorce settlement that cost Stallone over $25 million. This is the story of Sylvester Stallone's most expensive mistake. Brigitte Nielsen was 22 years old when she arrived on the Rocky IV set in 1985. She was stunning, nearly 6 feet tall, blonde, with a thick Danish accent and a body that stopped production whenever she walked by. She'd been a model in Europe, and this was her first major film role, playing Ludmila Drago, wife of the Soviet boxer Ivan Drago. Stallone was directing the film and starring as Rocky. He was also freshly divorced from Sasha Chak after a messy split that had destroyed his first marriage and damaged his relationship with his sons. He was vulnerable. And Brigitte was magnetic. The attraction was immediate and obvious. Cast and crew noticed Stallone couldn't take his eyes off her. Between takes, they'd talk for hours. The chemistry was electric and completely unprofessional, given he was directing and she was his employee. But Stallone didn't care about professional boundaries. He was smitten. Day 4 of filming, Stallone invited Brigitte to dinner. Day 5, they were inseparable. Day 7, he proposed. Yes, day 7. After knowing her for exactly 1 week, Stallone proposed marriage. Everyone around him was shocked. His agent called it temporary insanity. His lawyer begged him to at least do a prenuptial agreement. His ex-wife Sasha reportedly laughed when she heard, telling friends, "He'll regret this in 6 months." But Stallone was convinced. This was love. This was destiny. This was the woman he was meant to be with forever. They married on December 15, 1985, before Rocky IV was even released. The wedding was lavish, flowers everywhere, celebrities in attendance, media coverage treating it like a fairy tale. Stallone looked happy in photos. But people who were there said he also looked dazed, like he couldn't quite believe what he was doing. Friends said he seemed to be moving on autopilot, swept up in infatuation and ignoring every red flag. The red flags were numerous. Brigitte was 22. Stallone was 39, a 17-year age gap. She spoke limited English. They'd known each other for 7 days. She was still married to her first husband. The divorce wasn't finalized yet. She had a young son from that marriage. And she was clearly attracted to Stallone's fame and wealth as much as to him. None of this mattered to Stallone. He was in love. Or what he thought was love. The marriage was chaotic from day 1. Brigitte was high maintenance. She demanded constant attention, expensive gifts, lavish vacations. She wanted to be a movie star like Stallone, but lacked the talent or work ethic. She expected him to make her famous. Stallone tried. He cast her in more of his films. He introduced her to directors and producers. He paid for acting coaches and publicity. He spent millions trying to make Brigitte Nielsen into a star. It didn't work. She couldn't act. Reviews of her performances were brutal. Projects she was attached to failed. But the professional failures weren't the main problem. The main problem was that Brigitte was unfaithful. Rumors of her affairs started almost immediately. She was seen at clubs with other men while Stallone was working. She flirted openly with actors on film sets. Friends warned Stallone, but he didn't want to believe it. The most painful rumor involved Arnold Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger and Stallone had a complicated rivalry. They competed over everything, including women. And whispers started circulating that Brigitte was having an affair with Arnold while married to Stallone. Both Schwarzenegger and Brigitte denied it at the time. But years later, Brigitte admitted in interviews that yes, she'd had a sexual relationship with Arnold during her marriage to Stallone. The betrayal was devastating. Not just infidelity, but infidelity with Stallone's biggest rival. The man he competed with constantly. The man who'd been trying to outdo him for years. It was humiliation on multiple levels. Stallone confronted Brigitte. She denied everything, claimed the rumors were lies, accused him of being paranoid and controlling. He wanted to believe her. But the evidence kept mounting. Meanwhile, the marriage was destroying Stallone's relationship with his sons from his first marriage. Sage and Sergio barely saw their father anymore. Brigitte demanded all his attention. When the boys did visit, Brigitte was cold and dismissive. Stallone's ex-wife Sasha told friends, "He abandoned his children for that woman. She's destroyed what was left of our family." The boys resented Brigitte. And they resented their father for choosing her over them. By mid-1987, less than 18 months into the marriage, Stallone realized he'd made a catastrophic mistake. The love he'd felt was gone, replaced by exhaustion and resentment. Brigitte was draining him financially and emotionally. The infidelity was undeniable. And he'd sacrificed his relationship with his sons for a woman who didn't actually love him. In July 1987, Stallone filed for divorce. The media frenzy was immediate. Every tabloid ran the story. Rocky's marriage KOD. Stallone and Nielsen split after 18 months. But the real shock came when the divorce settlement details leaked. Because Stallone had been so rushed to marry, he hadn't signed a prenuptial agreement. His lawyers had begged him to, they'd even drafted one, but he'd refused, saying prenups were for people who expected to fail. That decision would cost him everything. Without a prenup, California community property laws applied. Everything Stallone earned during the marriage was considered joint property. That included his salary from films, his production company revenues, and his share of Rocky IV profits. Brigitte's lawyers went for blood. They demanded half of everything earned during the marriage. They calculated Stallone's earnings at over $50 million during those 18 months. They wanted $25 million. Stallone's legal team fought back, arguing Brigitte had contributed nothing to his earnings and was only entitled to basic support. But California law was clear: without a prenup, she was entitled to half. The final settlement, reached after months of bitter negotiations, Brigitte received approximately $25 million in cash and assets, plus ongoing spousal support, plus a house in Beverly Hills for 18 months of marriage. Roughly $1.4 million per month of marriage. Stallone was devastated financially and emotionally. $25 million gone. To a woman he'd known for 7 days before proposing. A woman who'd cheated on him with his rival. A woman who'd destroyed his relationship with his sons. Friends said the divorce broke something in Stallone. He became more cynical, more guarded, less trusting. The romantic optimism that had made him propose after 1 week was replaced by bitter realism. Years later, Stallone would call the Brigitte Nielsen marriage the worst decision of my life. He told an interviewer, "I was stupid. I was lonely after my first divorce, and Brigitte was beautiful and exciting. I confused infatuation with love. I ignored every warning sign. And I paid for it, $25 million worth of paid for it." When asked if he regretted it, he was blunt. "Every single day. That marriage cost me money, damaged my relationship with my sons, and taught me a very expensive lesson. Don't marry someone after knowing them for a week." The Brigitte Nielsen disaster had lasting impacts on Stallone's life. He became famously cautious about relationships. When he eventually met Jennifer Flavin in 1988, he dated her for 9 years before proposing. 9 years. The exact opposite of the 7-day engagement to Brigitte. And when he finally did marry Jennifer in 1997, he insisted on an ironclad prenuptial agreement. No chances. No risks, never again. His relationship with his sons took years to repair. Sage especially held resentment about the Brigitte years, feeling his father had abandoned them for a woman who didn't care about them. And financially, while $25 million didn't bankrupt Stallone, it was a significant hit. That's money he could never get back, paid to a woman who'd betrayed him with his rival. Brigitte Nielsen, for her part, moved on quickly. She married 4 more times after Stallone. She continued trying to act with limited success. She became more famous for her failed marriages than for any film role. In interviews, she'd talk about her time with Stallone with a mixture of nostalgia and dismissiveness. She'd say things like, "We were very young and passionate," completely ignoring that she'd cheated on him and walked away with $25 million. She also confirmed, years later, that yes, she'd had an affair with Arnold Schwarzenegger. She seemed to think this made her interesting rather than recognizing the cruelty of betraying her husband with his biggest rival. The Schwarzenegger revelation was particularly painful for Stallone. Arnold was supposed to be his friend, or at least his respected competitor. Instead, Arnold had slept with his wife. It added another layer to their already complicated rivalry. Stallone later said, "The Brigitte thing with Arnold. That was a line crossed. That wasn't competition anymore. That was betrayal." The two wouldn't fully reconcile until The Expendables in 2010, more than 20 years later. Today, the Brigitte Nielsen marriage stands as a cautionary tale in Hollywood. What happens when you let infatuation override judgment? 7 days from meeting to marriage. 18 months from wedding to divorce. $25 million in settlement. That's $1,388,888 per month. $46,296 per day. $1,929 per hour. For a marriage based on physical attraction and terrible judgment, Stallone learned his lesson. He never made that mistake again. But the cost of learning $25 million and years of damaged relationships was catastrophic. The 18-month marriage that nearly destroyed him. The Danish model who played him for millions. The affair with his rival that added insult to injury. This is the Brigitte Nielsen disaster, Sylvester Stallone's most expensive mistake.